Yes. Hi, I'm Norah. And yes, this is part two. I gave part one in Bournemouth in 2019. And some people are here who've heard it. I'm sorry, you have me again. uh, but it's part two. I was diagnosed in 2015. I was on treatments for, on watch and wait for 5 years, almost to the day of my first hematology appointment. And then I had venetoclax and obinutuzumab, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And that's a picture of me walking with the Ramblers outside of London. And yes, things I've learned. Treatment works. Don't sweep the fear under the rug. Start treatment before your hemoglobin gets too low, maybe below 90 if you're a woman, and the body is for moving. And these are the colors in Canada in the autumn. I was there in September, and that was grand. All right, so it says, let's see if I can move that. I can't. Well, it says November 2020, the time of COVID. My spleen was enormous and had been for a few years. It was about 23, 25 centimeters. I was a bit more tired. I'd had a couple of drenching night sweats, but really I was fine. I found these. John, what do you think's happening? Should I press another button?
Let me press that first.
Or I could do that with the clicker. Okay.
Press that, okay, right, okay.
And now it should work, do you think?
No, pause on touch that, use that, hold it.
Look at that.
Just hold it down.
I just have to hold it down long, not be so frantic. Thank you, Hillary. Well, I found these pictures of me in November 2020. I was feeling fine. You know, it was the pandemic, bicycling around London. And yes, then I had my regularly scheduled appointment at Guy's Hospital in London with Dr. Piers Patton. A little chat. We had a little chat about my crazy spleen. This was January 20th, 2021. And I said, well, how is my hemoglobin? And he started typing. You know how the doctors are always typing in those, you can hear them, and I see the nodding. So he's typing away. And then he turns back and he says, oh, your hemoglobin's 83. We have to start treatment on Monday. So that was rather dramatic. My hemoglobin had been low for quite a while, around 100 for about 2 years. So that was great. We had avoided treatment during that time, but I knew I wasn't really fine. You know, I was a bit tired, so I wasn't surprised. And I was glad to be starting treatment right away. Start drinking those 2.5 liters of water. And it was decided I would take venetoclax and obinutuzumab, which was fantastic because it had just been approved by NICE in November, the end of November, to be paid for by NICE or the Cancer Drug Fund. They paid for mine. And I started taking the allopurinol, which helps move all those dead CLL cells through the kidneys. I started on an antibiotic, cotrimoxazole, and an antiviral, acyclovir. And then I started venetoclax. Now, I did it backwards. When you start, you will start with obinutuzumab. But for various reasons, I think because they actually didn't have any obinutuzumab in the cupboard at that time, and it was COVID, and, you know, transportation was haywire. And because I'm a trustee, I have that inside knowledge. You too could become a trustee with inside knowledge. No, I just knew that venetoclax was also a treatment as a second line treatment with rituximab, and they start with the venetoclax. So I said, that's absolutely fine. If we have to start on Monday, let's start with the venetoclax. So all the time, this is what a venetoclax treatment looks like. Monday, you have a blood test, baseline for the numbers and how your kidney function is. Tuesday morning, back at home, I took my pill, the 25 milligrams at 8 or 7, depending on when the CNS told me. Always do what your CNS tells you to do. Because a certain number of hours later, I went back to the hospital Tuesday afternoon to get a blood test to see if the kidneys were okay. And are you drinking the water? Yes. And then Wednesday morning, before taking the pill, I was back at the hospital for the blood test. Or the kidney's still okay? Yes, okay, then take the pill. and then keep taking the pill for the rest of the week until Monday morning when you get to do it all again. Now, some people are in hospital during this time, so you don't have to go back and forth to the hospital. I happen to live a 14-minute walk from Guy's Hospital, so it was great. And it was COVID. I don't think they wanted to put me in the hospital. And, oh yes, brilliant Lewis, who we'll talk about in a minute, decided and Matt back there behind the camera said, why don't you do a vlog? Talk about your treatment. So I did one. Luckily, that was all. So, oh, no.
I clicked on your picture.
Do you think? Well, it's no great loss if we don't hear it. Actually, it's fine. Because the main thing is I was nervous, but I was also really excited to be starting treatment after I'd been so nervous about it for 5 years, you know, waiting, worrying, and then finally it was happening. So that's much better than listening to that. Right. So you do that venetoclax every week for 5 weeks till you get up to 400 milligrams. I think they didn't always test me on the Wednesdays because my kidneys were fine. There was no sign of tumor lysis, and I was drinking all the water. But I was in there getting checked all the time for my hemoglobin, because I was treated to a blood transfusion on that first Tuesday, and I had 13 units of blood transfused over the next couple of months. But that's not necessarily going to happen to you because you're going to start before your hemoglobin gets too low. But, you know, if it does happen, don't be afraid. You get the transfusion, the doctors, the nurses, they know what they're doing. In fact, mine dropped to 53 and they said, oh, that can't be right. We better do another test. Oh, and then it was 52. I got 2 units of blood that day. So that's exciting, right? Which reminds me that the body is amazing, you know, that it just got used to less and less oxygen, but I was still walking to the hospital every day. Like, it's amazing, our bodies, which of course makes me think I should respect it more and drink less wine and exercise more, which I am doing. I didn't drink at all during treatment, and I had stopped drinking when I was diagnosed in 2015, but I would occasionally have a half pint out because it was easier to just order the half pint than to explain why you weren't drinking, especially in this country. And then because this format said put pictures here, I did. But the second one in is a picture of St. Paul's, because that was my view from my room at Guy's Hospital when I developed a fever. And I was in hospital 3 times with fevers, but I never had sepsis. They never actually figured out why I had fevers, and they would keep me in a bed and then they sent me home. And that's me getting blood transfusions. And at the beginning, with the mask on, and, you know, the shield, I had gloves at one point. You know, the joys of COVID. Oh yes, and when I got to the 400 milligrams, it was like a big bag of cotton had fallen on my head, and I had to just lie down. I didn't even watch TV or read a book. It was just, oh, and it was like the cotton was inside my head too. So that was a bit tricky. Like, I was glad I wasn't working full time. And if that feeling came over as I was heading out for my daily walk, it was a shorter walk, but as I say there, a lot of short walks because you have to be near the loo because you're drinking so much water during the day. So I did have to go off venetoclax to try to give the hemoglobin a chance to live. And when I went back on after being off, it was actually fine. I didn't have the large bag of cotton on my head, which was nice. Oh yeah, I have 2 daughters who live in Canada, and I asked them to help me visualize. I'd heard, you know, if you visualize things, it will help. So I said, you've got to visualize my hemoglobin blooming in my bone marrow and floating out through my, you know, through the bloodstream. And those are my lovely daughters. It's the one closest to me, Zoe, who made this. In the middle is Sydney. And so Zoe made me a playlist on Spotify, Norah's Bloomin' Hemoglobin. Bloomin' here. And it was great. It was just one of the many things they did from Canada, you know, and it was, it's there if you need it. It's great. And yes, my hemoglobin stabilized and rose over 100 in April. Normal for a woman is 120, but that was fine. And that's a picture of me dancing in the kitchen to the music. And I started obinutuzumab in May because my, you know, everything looked okay. So whenever you get obinutuzumab, it sort of looks like this. Every time you get a bag of saline, steroids. I think the antihistamine went in through here too, and 2 paracetamol before you get anything. And that cuts down on the any chance of an allergic reaction to this very powerful, very wonderful drug that's coursing through your veins. So on the first day, you just get 10% of that first dose, and it's dripped very slowly. And if there's any sort of an allergic reaction, they just stop and they restart slowly, or they might stop altogether. You know, they keep a close eye on you during that. And so on day 2, you get the second half of the first dose, day 8, as you can see there, the second dose, day 15, and then you get 1 dose at the beginning of the month for the next 5 months, for a total of 6 months. So if you are doing it the normal way now, you would have the first month of obinutuzumab, and then you start venetoclax, I think, at the end of that or the beginning of that second month. Oh dear. Sorry. I can't even remember what comes next to, I've done it again, Hillary. There, look at that. Okay, thank you. The, right, the day after an infusion of obinutuzumab, I felt okay. But the second day after, I felt a little queasy, but, you know, a little weak. But I went out with my friends, even though I didn't want to, and I was glad I did. You know, you have to get out there. You have to go for the walk. You have to talk to people. But that's right. I did get a slight fever again as I was leaving after the first infusion. Like I was on the way out the door and like, no, you have to stay. So I had to stay overnight, but the fever went away and I was fine. It was frustrating for everybody, I'm sure. Is it the fact that I've moved this thing? It's upset me. I mean, I've upset it. There we go. I was fine at that time, but also not fine. And I might just come back to this too. Like during that time, other things are happening in your lives. My dad died. My mom had died just previously. My daughters were living in Canada. And it was COVID. So I was afraid for them to come, you know, that they would bring me COVID. I was really afraid. And also, I was terrified of that low hemoglobin. I lay in bed and listened to my pulse in my ears and just was hoping that it would be still there in the morning for those 2 months. So that was terrifying. Ben, this is Ben, my husband. He's a saint. He was a rock, but you know, it's hard for the patient, the partner too. It really is. By May, I started to feel better. I was still a bit thin, which was because of the cancer and the treatment. I thought it was going to be my new thin life, but it wasn't, because I started to gain weight in the summer and return to my normal healthy self. We traveled more. If I'd had a job, it would have been fine. That's a picture of me practicing my Tai Chi in the garden. I used to, record myself. I was doing online Tai Chi, which was great, a great mind and body sort of thing. So last pills of venetoclax, early February 2022, and they're big pills. Get ready. So 3 weeks after the end of treatment, I had the blood test, which takes 2 weeks to process. And, yes, I was and still am, I hope, MRD negative, which means measurable residual disease, none in my blood. So it worked. It's a pretty full remission. Call it a deep remission, so we hope it's a long remission, at least 5 years and hopefully longer. Gosh. Now, here's the thing. This briefly to talk about emotions. You know, I had a bit of fear and I was told they don't disappear just because you don't acknowledge them. I have a friend who's a therapist who at the end of treatment said, "How are you, Norah?" And I said, "I'm fine, I'm great. You know, everything's great, got a new place to live, I'm going to Canada." And she said, "Really? After everything you've been through in the last 2 years? Huh, okay, you're gonna go with that. But you know, you can't keep ignoring the emotions. Maybe you should go back, you should sit in the grief, in the fear, let it wash over you. Or the emotions will come back to haunt you, to bite you. Because," she said, "your body remembers." And I'm like, what? No. But then I thought of something a little while ago that helped me sort of understand this. Your body remembers how to ride a bicycle. Your body can do things that your mind is not aware of. Okay, stay with me. Yes, we got the fancy bikes. So your body remembers those good things like riding the bike, but also these bad times. Like right now, I'm sweating and my knees are knocking. And especially this, when I look at that picture, I got to take a deep breath because it was actually terrifying, right? I said I was fine, but the emotions can pop up in other ways. And I think for me, I got stuck on the couch in the autumn by the autumn of 2023. Wasn't even watching television, wasn't even reading. Just on the couch with the phone, maybe depressed. And I sort of mentioned this. So my daughters and my colleagues here said, well, maybe you should talk to someone. You can, So I did. I made the call. I found someone to talk to. And I think it was the second session where she said, how was that treatment? And the floodgates just opened, I was just right back there. I can laugh about it now, but I certainly cried then. And I think it's because I'm actually now talking to someone about emotions as opposed to just saying, I'm fine, everything's great. I'm continuing to walk with the Ramblers. If I wasn't talking about it, I think I would have said, oh, I'll just go next week or next month. I would have been sort of back on the couch. So I'm excited. And then while I was trying to just figure out how to say this, my husband is listening to the golf show on Netflix, where this guy, Wyndham Clark, who's angry, he's very hard on himself, he's drinking to excess. His mother had died, and then he saw a sports psychologist. And of course, then he won. He won the US Open. So, and the sports psychologist is credited with this winning. And so it's not just crazy old ladies like me who, are talking about your emotions. So there you go for the golfers in the room. And now, so I just, don't ignore your feelings and use Support Act. It was a great thing to go to those drop-ins with Pinky and you get an understanding of how to breathe, guided meditation, and to try to control the spiraling thoughts. Go for a walk, move your body, you will feel better. That's the website for Support Act. And there's my lovely family. So I'm feeling very optimistic. That's Christmas in Canada with an unfrozen lake in the background. That's the thing. And I've been out. I say, get out there. That's what it says under that thing. I've been to ABBA. That's a picture of me with the poster where I went dancing with that band at a local pub. And things I've learned. Yeah, the treatment works. Don't sweep the fear under the rug. Start treatment before your hemoglobin gets too low and move your body.